Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe. Chronicles of a Gooner. Harry Symeou time. Arsenal. Come on, you Gunners. Arsenal. Chronicles of a Gooner.
Hey everybody, how's it going? And welcome back to another episode of the pod. Hope you're all having a wonderful week so far. The weekend is pretty much here. It's wet, it's windy, and it is chucking it down with rain here in North London. So not exactly the kind of weather that allows you to take full advantage of the international break. But I suppose the international break does give us an opportunity just to reset, gives us a bit of an opportunity to have a breather. But you know what's going to be the longest part is this bit now. Like there's international football at the moment, and whether that's your cup of tea or not, there is something to occupy us and there is something to sink our teeth into. And we're going to look back a little bit at England's victory last night because it was a very Arsenal-heavy victory. You could say it was Arsenal 2, Serbia 0, as has been mentioned in the chat box already this morning. So we'll cover bits and pieces from that game off, mainly because I want to focus on a couple of Arsenal players that really did impress. And with regards to one, Eberechi Eze, I want to talk a bit about his position. I do. It's a debate that I think we've had on the pod a couple of times. I think when we get into it, we'll kind of provide all the context and the background to it, because I do think that Martin Odegaard's injury at the moment is a factor in the way that Eberechi Eze is being utilized right now. But I think there's way more to come from him. And I think we can certainly extract a bit more from one of our big summer signings than we've managed to so far. And let's see how it goes, right? We'll have the conversation. We'll have the debate. I'd love to get you guys' thoughts from the live chat as well. Always interested to hear what you guys have to say. We did an episode yesterday where we ranked and rated our summer signings so far. And we sort of went through every player. We talked about sort of expectation versus what we've seen. We talked about sample size, because I think that's really important. And with some of our new signings, obviously that sample size is still very small, and it's very difficult to make any kind of sweeping or definitive judgments for that matter. So, you know, I think we've got to, I think we've got to sort of make sure that we apply the context when we're having those conversations. But based on the ratings that I gave each player, and they were ratings out of 10, I ranked them. And Eberechi Eze was in joint sixth. Joint sixth in terms of our best signings so far, based on what we've seen so far. And I think the position has quite a bit to do with it. So we're going to do that. We're going to break it down. We're going to get into it as the pod goes on. So there's lots and lots coming your way. Just a quick reminder, if you are with us on YouTube right now and you haven't done so already, be sure to leave a like on the video. That really does help. And be sure to subscribe to the channel as well. That is really important to us. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, leave us a review and all the rest of it. You know the drill by now. Thank you so much. Right, let's get into today's content then. And we're going to start by talking Martin Odegaard. The Arsenal captain seeked special permission from Arsenal Football Club, or the Norwegian FA, I should say, asked for permission from Arsenal Football Club for Martin Odegaard to join up with them during this international break, not in a playing capacity, but as, you know, a dressing room figure. He's obviously the captain. He's obviously someone that holds quite strong influence within the changing room, and Norway are looking to qualify for the World Cup for the first time in a long time. I think 1998 was the last World Cup that the Norwegians went to. And it's crazy that, really, because they've had some talented players over the years. It's just never all really kind of clicked, and the stars haven't quite aligned. But now with Odegaard and with Haaland in particular, you know, Norway are probably as good as they've ever been, really. Obviously, Odegaard's not available in a playing capacity right now, but given the size and the importance of this match, I think it was actually, you know, right that Martin Odegaard put his potential holiday on hold, because when you're injured and when you're in recovery and when you're in the situation that he is in, you probably do take advantage of an international break by maybe going away, getting a bit of sun, having a bit of a breather, change of scenery. Obviously, you keep up your rehab and you keep up your training and all the rest of it. But if you're Martin Odegaard, you probably take advantage of this period, and instead he's gone with the team. Now, let me be clear, because I've seen some sort of comments around this and some reaction to this that I do think's been overblown. Like, you are the captain of your national team that are on the verge of achieving something, quite frankly, historic, because they haven't done it since I was 8 years old. So, like, I think you should be there. I think you should be involved. I think you should be part of the changing room. I think you have every right, having worked incredibly hard to improve Norwegian football on the whole and got yourselves into this position where you're now very, very close to qualification. I think, I would have seen it as wrong if Martin Odegaard had gone and sat in Dubai, for example, and soaked up the sun while Norway were sort of still in the trenches trying to achieve what it is that Martin Odegaard is a part of. Now, had he stayed behind because his recovery takes precedent, I'll be fine with that as well. But I like, it's good that he went, and it was great to see those images and those pictures of Martin Odegaard sort of celebrating with the rest of his team and all that at the end of the game. But like, I do think too much has been made of this. Like, I've seen some people being like, this is amazing, this is what he's all about, blah blah. I mean, that's whatever. Like, I think he's fine. And I think it's a nice thing, and it's a nice touch. But it's one of those things that I sort of read it, and I sort of, obviously we read the story that he was going, and then we saw those images last night, and I sort of saw them when scrolling through social media, and I went, oh, that's nice. But then after about 30 seconds, I moved on to the next thing, and it wasn't really that big a deal to me. I know for a lot of people, though, it's been made into a really big deal, and I'm not. Maybe I sound like the Grinch. Maybe I know Christmas is not that far away. Maybe I sound like a miserable old sod, but I mean, it's nice and all that, but like, is it a major story? But seeing as it's been talked about, I thought it was worth just covering off very, very briefly on today's pod. Bukayo Saka, another one who is very, very important to his nation. How many Man of the Match awards is Bukayo going to pick up playing for England? Now, I'll be honest with you. I didn't watch the England game in full last night. I saw the last 20 minutes. And I saw the highlights afterwards. So I've seen all the key moments. I've seen all the big moments. I do try during the international break to just unplug a little bit. I can't just go completely dark on football, because obviously it's a really important part of my job to kind of know what's going on and to understand what's happening. But I do try and take a little bit of distance from it, because otherwise you can get footballed out, and people might think you're crazy. What are you talking about? How can you be footballed out? It can happen. Believe me, it can happen. So I kind of took the decision last night not to sit and watch the game in full. But I remember I had a friend round. I remember sort of turning on the game with about 20 minutes to go and seeing Bukayo Saka running up the right-hand side, and just thinking to myself, why the hell is he still on the pitch? Like, why is he still on the pitch? I'd then gone back and seen his goal, which was excellently taken, by the way. Brilliant finish. Really, really good. Nice reaction from him. And the placement of the finish was just exquisite. And then obviously we get the Eberechi Eze goal, and we'll come on to talk about Eze in a minute. But just on Saka, I mean, he is such an important component in this England team. And it's mad to me that in people's desperation to include certain others, that there are still some people out there that would say, yeah, you know what, Bukayo Saka, I'm not 100% on him. Maybe he should be the one to make way for instance, Phil Foden coming in off the right-hand side, or a Cole Palmer coming in off the right-hand side. Listen, Bukayo Saka, along with one or two others, is one of the first names on the England team sheet, and so it should be. He is a consistent performer for his country. And when you go back to those European Championships, where, of course, he missed one of the penalties in the shootout, a penalty that I never felt he should have ever been put forward to take, by the way, at his age, and under those circumstances. For me, at that point in time, it was on the senior players to take that on. And he stepped up, and of course he missed. And we all know what happened after that. There was a horrible sort of influx of abuse in towards his sort of inboxes and all the rest of it. He got loads of support, and rightly so. And I think in a lot of ways it made him stronger, and it's created a bit of an edge to Bukayo Saka that maybe might not have existed exactly the same had it not been through some of the experiences that he's been through. Not just that, but others as well. I'm not saying that the abuse that he received is in any way, shape, or form acceptable, but what I'm saying is that things like that, they can help if you choose to channel them in the right way. And what I love about Bukayo Saka is he hasn't sort of allowed it to kind of weigh on him too heavy. He's been able to work through that, to get through it. And as I say, it's never okay and it's never acceptable. But I think you can choose how you handle things like that. Things that are out of your control, things that are beyond your control like that, you can choose how you handle them as a person. And I think what Bukayo Saka has done is handled it in the best way possible. And so credit to him for that. And it shows his maturity, doesn't it? Which, we can all see. But when you handle something like that at that age, you're able to get past it and be better for it. That is a real indicator of what an intelligent and mature individual that this young man is. And to see him go from that to, as I say, one of the probably 3 most important players in the England side, if not the most important in our eyes anyway, as Arsenal fans, it's just amazing to see. And, people that suggest or that even are toying with the idea in their own minds of dropping him or leaving him out or whatever, I just think to myself, you haven't got a clue. You have not got a clue what you are talking about. But yeah, another great Bukayo Saka performance at international level. I just wish he played less minutes. Yeah, that would have been the ideal situation, right? Anyway, let's move on, and I want to talk about the main subject on today's pod, which is ARTETA'S Eze. Yes, I want to talk about him because he scored an unbelievable goal for England last night. I mean, the finish was just exquisite. Arrives round about the corner of the box, opens up his right foot and just steers it into the top corner. The keeper's got no chance whatsoever. Wraps up the points for England because a few minutes before that, Serbia had created one or two opportunities of note, actually, that they probably should have taken. And Eze goes down the other end of the pitch and essentially finishes the game off, right? I think if you look at the goal in isolation, because I think what you can do is you can watch someone on international duty do something very specific, like ARTETA'S Eze did yesterday, which is coming off that left-hand side, latching onto Phil Foden's pass, which apparently was the greatest pass of all time. If you listen to some of the coverage around the game last night, you'd have thought that it was the greatest pass of all time. And it simply was not that great. Like, it was a decent, okay, bog standard pass that I expect from a player of Phil Foden's quality, actually probably to execute a little bit better. And I think it bobbled a little bit as well, which says it wasn't as crisp or as amazing as people have suggested. Listen, I'm not going to hammer anyone who commentated on it or anything like that, because I've seen some clips going around and I've seen people going, well, that's what the commentator chose to highlight. Listen, let me tell you this, and I've not commentated at that level. But obviously, particularly this season, I work quite regularly as a commentator on TV, on the radio, whatever. And look, it's very easy in the moment to say the wrong thing or to focus on the wrong thing. Hell, it's very easy to think you've seen something that you didn't, or to struggle with a decision or whatever, because you're under pressure and you can doubt yourself. And then that can lead to you holding back, and then you're not really saying anything at all and all the rest of it. I will never sit here and criticize a commentator for focusing on the wrong thing in that moment. I think you've always got an opportunity to kind of look at it and go, yeah, actually, this was the best part of that move. This was the bit that I should be highlighting. And you want to see that corrected, of course. But the initial commentary, like, I've seen a lot of people rip it apart. Mate, it can happen. It can happen. And we're all human. A commentator's got one chance to nail a moment. And maybe this is me talking about this from the commentators club. But I just, I won't slate a commentator for focusing on what I thought was the wrong thing, because you get another opportunity, don't you, to look at it, and you have an opportunity to correct it. And in that moment, you can get it wrong quite easily. Who I will slate is those that watch the game as maybe pundits. I say slate, that's a bit harsh. Who I will criticize, who I will comment on, are those who, get to watch the game like we do, have more replays, have the opportunity to, gather their thoughts before having to comment on whatever situation. Those guys should be a little bit more focused, I think, on what Eze has done rather than what Phil Foden's done. But anyway, my point is that in isolation, you can look at that goal and you can go, Eze should be playing from the left. It's very, very easy to do that. Where does he score from? He scores from that inside left position. He's got all sorts of space, but there's so many things you have to factor in and consider here. So first and foremost, Serbia are looking for a goal at the other end, which is why you've got the space as England that they did, is why you've got the ability to counter-attack the way that they did, and it's why you've got the time on the ball to sort of arc your body, get your shape set, and essentially send it into the top corner the way you did. Okay? That's not going to be the case every time Eberechi Eze plays for Arsenal. So if you're sitting there and going, Eze should definitively play from the left now because he scored that goal for England, that is just recency biased. And that is just knee-jerk analysis based on what you saw last night. When we signed Eberechi Eze, I was looking at it and I was going, he's a 10, but I don't mind him playing from the left. And actually, he's so talented that I would try and find a way of working him into the team, even if it means he's slightly, at least in theory, playing out of position. Going into the season, I hold my hands up and I will say that I didn't think that Gabriel Martinelli was going to get back to form the way he has. And I didn't think that Leandro Trossard was going to produce what he has done so far this season. So when Eze came in, I sort of saw it as an easy fit. I looked at it and I went, well, this guy is coming in. He's probably not going to play through the middle because Odegaard's going to play there. And then you've got that lovely balance between Odegaard and Rice and Zubimendi. And I feel that that works really, really well. And actually, with Odegaard's pressing capability being greater, I think, than Eberechi Eze's, I think it's right that he plays in the middle and Eze plays left. But we didn't anticipate Odegaard having the injury problems that he has at the start of the season. And I certainly did not anticipate both Trossard and Martinelli performing the way that they have in recent times. So things change in football, right? Things change. If you'd have asked me, at the start of the season, would I have liked to have seen Eze have a go in the more central role? I'd have said, yeah, let's have a go at it. But I've started to change my mind on where we're going to get the best out of him. And it's not because I'm reacting to what we saw last night. I've said this for a few weeks. Like, there's a lot of you in the chat that disagree with my opinions, that have a pop at me regularly, which is all good as long as it's in the right spirit and all the rest of it. But you will know that I've said for a while, I don't know if him through the middle is working for Arsenal. Now, it's not the same when you're talking about Arsenal or England or Crystal Palace. They're all different entities. They're all different scenarios with lots of different factors that must be considered. But I just think for Arsenal, where we're constantly facing low blocks, and Eze is a lot of the time in a dead position. And what I mean by dead position is that he's playing in behind the striker as a more conventional 10 than someone like Martin Odegaard would be. But we're struggling to break the lines and find him. And so we're having to go wide because naturally teams focus on protecting the center of the pitch first from a defensive point of view. And so we're having to go right and we're having to go left. And Eze's presence in those more central areas, it does help Saka, Martinelli, Trossard, whoever it is that plays on that left flank, because as a defensive unit that is focused, as I say, first and foremost in protecting the width of your penalty area, you don't have the resource to commit in those central areas in the way that you need to when a team's playing with a conventional 10. But you also, if you do that, you can't commit there and you can't commit wide at the same time. It's kind of one or the other. And I think, we had this debate yesterday on the pod when we were talking about Eze and whether or not this thing of sort of standing really centrally off the ball, or when Arsenal win the ball back and looking to receive it in those areas is tactical. I think it is in part tactical. The more I think about it, the more I break it down in my own mind, it feels tactical. It feels like something that Mikel wants him to do, because if he's there, it creates space for the others. But it also means that when he does get the ball in those areas, he's immediately in a position where he can shoot, where he can score, where he can impact the game. So I feel like Eze has been, or had to be, a little bit more selfless since coming to Arsenal. And the decision's been taken to use him in a way that brings out the best from the team, rather than it just being about him as an individual. Now, at Crystal Palace, it was different, wasn't it? It was, right, we're Crystal Palace. We've got a great structure. We've got a great shape under Oliver Glasner. How do we now platform our best player to go and win us football matches? And so it's very, very different. But at Arsenal, it's, well, how do we platform Saka? How do we platform Odegaard? How do we facilitate Gyökeres? How do we get Trossard or Martinelli in the game? There's so many more components at Arsenal that, you know, the scenario is a totally and completely different one. And therefore, when it comes to Eze, and I did the pod yesterday, and sort of, I had a couple of messages from friends saying, I thought you were a bit harsh on him there. And I said, like, look, I feel the way I feel about his performances. I feel the way I do, and I'm not going to make any apologies for that. But, and I did touch on this, to be fair, I'm starting to wonder how much of it is tactical and how much of it is Eze sort of insisting that he is in that area because that's where he feels most comfortable and that's where he feels he can do the most damage. Because I would like to see him at times in certain games drift left or drift right and get closer to the wide player so that he can combine with them. But also, if we're finding it easier to funnel the ball wide, then surely we can get the ball to his feet more if he's just a little bit more mobile in terms of his starting position and he isn't so static. But then again, if the manager's telling you, no, I want you to stay there because you're helping me get more out of Saka and Trossard, and also when the ball does come to you, as I've already touched on, you're on the edge of the box, you can hit it. You don't need to think twice. You know, you can break into the box easily from that position. When you factor all of that in, it could be tactical as well. I think it's probably a bit of both, but I think we need to find a little bit more balance between, you know, using Eze really well tactically, but also making sure that we're extracting what we can from a guy who's clearly very talented, who's clearly very, very good, and who we signed for a lot of money because, you know, we thought it could be a game changer and a difference maker. I want to see him be that a little bit more. And it's not to slate the guy, and it's not to say that he's rubbish and it was a waste of money or any of that. It's just that, you know, we've all got really high expectations because we've all seen him produce brilliant stuff in the Premier League for a number of years now. So I just want to see a little bit more. And how you go about that, I suppose, is the $1 million question. In giving him that freedom and allowing him to go right and to go left and to drop into different pockets of space, you know, he becomes a different problem for the opposition and maybe less of a problem in that, you know, they're still quite comfortable in their feeling that they've protected the width of their box in those central areas. And then maybe that leads to him creating congestion in whatever spaces it is that he's drifting into, which then in turn does not help the players around him. So I think it's a really, really interesting debate. But I think when you're playing for Arsenal, knowing what we are going to come up against pretty much every week in terms of game plans and styles, I do think him operating from the left could be more beneficial, because if everything I've just said is true about the central area being focused on, he's naturally going to get more of the ball on the left-hand side. Because if you're playing an advanced wing position versus an advanced central position, it's easier to work the ball to you in the wide spaces. That's just the way it goes. That's based on the way people defend against us. That is a common theme. Like, there's games where Saka gets way more of the ball than Eze, right? There's games where Martinelli or Trossard will see way more of the ball than Eze, who's playing in that central role. He's not Martin Odegaard. He isn't going to go searching like Odegaard does. When Odegaard plays in that position, he doesn't play it the same either. He doesn't play it like a traditional 10. He plays it more like an 8/10, which means that he will come into different positions to get on the ball and make things happen. It's not the same. Eze being a more natural number 10 is actually, I think, in a lot of ways, making his life more difficult. But I also appreciate that he's playing that role right now because there is no Martin Odegaard. And when Martin Odegaard returns, that's when Mikel's got a decision to make, right? What do you do with Eze? Does he come out the 11? Does he go left? Does he play as one of the eights in games where you feel like you might be able to get away with that? There's a lot of options available to our manager. Right now, though, in that sort of central 10 position or 8/10, depending on what personnel we have available, Eze's the only option, really. And so, I think we're going to find out a lot about what Mikel's intentions are for Eze when everybody's fit and available. The other thing is as well that Mikel's never shied away, has he, from looking at a player that he signed maybe to do one role and thinking, that's not quite where I'm getting the best out of you, so I'm going to move you. Kai Havertz being the standout example there. Even some of the defenders that we signed, you looked at them and they were probably signed as centre-halves and they've turned into fullbacks or vice versa, whatever. So, he's not afraid to do that, and he's not worried about sort of going back on what the original plan was with regards to certain players. So, yeah, I just think for me, Eze in the team is obviously a good thing and a bonus because we know that he can produce magical moments, and he produced another one for England last night. But I suppose even though I've been banging the drum of I'd quite like to see him operate from the left now, rather than through the middle, where I think he can be shut down and limited, or at least they can stop us, opposition teams, that is, working the ball into him. I guess I want to see him used from the left a little bit more once Odegaard's back and moving forward. But my point is that just because he scored a goal for England coming in off the left, it doesn't mean that it's a straightforward question that we can answer very, very easily by just saying, well, look at that goal he scored, so play him there. Because it's a totally different scenario. And I wanted to highlight that point because even me last night, I was like, when he scored the goal, I think I tweeted straight away saying Eze from the left and the little emoji. And then I was like, yeah, like tonight it worked and it'll work in certain games, but it isn't going to work every week. And what we've just seen for England versus Serbia isn't necessarily going to be the same thing that will get you through a game against Bournemouth or a game against Chelsea or whoever it might be, Man United, whatever. Do you see what I'm trying to say? It's not as cut and dry as Eze is a left-sided player or he's a 10. There is a debate to be had, and there is a decision that needs to be made on a week-by-week basis based on, I think, the opposition and lots of other factors and lots of other things. The problem is right now that with no Martin Odegaard, with no Kai Havertz, with no Martinelli, with no, Gyökeres, our options are quite limited. And so he's playing this role consistently, and some weeks it works great, and in other weeks it doesn't. And I think it's going to be a bit like that because we don't have that opportunity to rotate, to change, and to be more flexible based on what we're up against and who we're facing. So that's just my view on that. If you haven't done so already and you're watching us on YouTube, please leave a like on the video. Can we get to 100 likes by the time I hit the end stream button? I'd be super grateful if we could. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And if you're watching this back on playback, make sure you click the hype button, hype the video. Also, if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please do leave us a review. Those really, really do help. And you can go one further by supporting us on Patreon for less than the price of a cup of coffee per month. Even though we've got an unbelievable community here on the Chronicles of a Gooner YouTube channel, we are first and foremost a podcast. So if you'd like to support the podcast and get access to additional podcasts and access every podcast episode completely ad-free while having, as I say, access to other things and other bits and pieces, you can do so by supporting us on Patreon. Patreon.com/The Chronicles of a Gooner. The link is in the description below. Right, we're going to take a really brief pause. And when I come back, I want to get your thoughts. I want to get your questions from the live chat. So get them in. Let's get on with it.
You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe.
That's right. Like and subscribe. Make sure you've done it. Why not? Get involved. Get on with it. Right. Okay. Let's dive into the chat box. Lost my train of thought there for a minute. I was thinking, what am I doing here? Arsenal Code says Eze just needs to be competing for the left wing and used to rest Rice in the left central midfield role when Odegaard is back. But again, I don't think it's as cut and dry as that, because, like, yeah, he can compete for the left side, of course. And players are going to get minutes at Arsenal, right? Regardless of whether they're starters or finishers, as Mikel Arteta likes to call them. But you say, like, rest Rice in left midfield. You can't do that in every game because they're not the same player. Like, you can't just say, yeah, you know what, 20 minutes to go, we're 2-0 up or we're 1-0 up, let's take Declan Rice out and put Eberechi Eze in, because they're not like for like. They're not like for like at all. And that is where, you know, it's great having a squad with all different options and players with different uses and stuff. But that's where the art of management comes in, isn't it? Where you've got to be able to identify what you can get away with, what you can't. And I think in a lot of games, you take Declan Rice out of the midfield and you put Eze in, you lose athleticism, you lose power, you lose strength, you lose a defensive awareness, you lose a hell of a lot of things. So I think, yeah, he can play in that left central midfield role in certain games and against certain opponents and in certain phases and states. But, like, I think basically what I'm trying to get at, and this is more a wider point, is we don't have to sort of label him as any one of those things. We just have to be able to decide when it's the right time to use him and you know, when it's not. I think that's what I'm saying here. Guitar Solo says Eze has not played well for us from the left wing position. So why would we take Trossard or Martinelli off just to shoehorn fan favourites for the sake of seeing fan favourites only on the pitch? No. You're mistaking what I'm saying. At no point have I said that if Eze is not performing, he should be on the pitch regardless. My view was at the start of the season, as I've already explained on today's episode, that Martinelli and Trossard would not perform the way that they have. And I was wrong. I've said it before. Right now, okay, if everybody was fit and available, my 11 would be this. Raya in goal, Timber at right back, Saliba, Gabriel, Calafiori, Zubimendi, Rice, Odegaard, Trossard right now, based on current form, Saka on the right, and Gyökeres through the middle. And then you've got your Havertzes and your Ezes and your Martinellis and all these people that you can bring off the substitutes bench that can make a difference. And you can rotate in certain games as well. But if you were asking me to pick my 11 for a cup final, let's say, that's what it would be. I'm not one of those people that says that Eze has to play. I just thought when we first signed him that he was such an upgrade quality-wise on the players that, you know, we were talking about him potentially replacing, that I wanted to find a way to get him in the team. Those players that I thought he was an upgrade on have stepped up and are performing at a really good and high level, and credit to them. I'm not saying that you should move them out of the way or that the team shouldn't be picked on merit. I want to see the team picked on merit, but I'm just thinking about ways in which we can extract the most from someone like Eberechi Eze, because as good as he is and as good as he has been at times and in moments for Arsenal so far, when I ranked our summer signings yesterday, he was pretty far down the list in terms of expectation versus what he's produced. And I keep saying it. I'm toying with why I think that is. I think it is in part down to tactics in the way that we're using him, in the way that opposition sides seek to nullify us and cancel us out. But I also think there's a bit of onus on him to go, you know what, I'm going to break out of the shape and I'm going to go and do my thing so that I can influence the game. Because ultimately, you know, we spent the whole summer talking about the fact that we need players that are going to go, yep, off the ball, we're in shape, we're in position, we're committed, we're going to press, we're going to do all the things the managers want. But we were lacking, I think we've been lacking players for years that just go, that's the system, that's the shape. I'll make sure I do my work off the ball. But do you know what? When we're in possession, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to trust in my own judgment. I'm going to look for the spaces. I'm going to identify the spaces. I'm going to go and utilize those spaces. I'm going to go and expose those spaces. I'm not going to be a robot that is being controlled by my manager on the sidelines. I have to have that sort of belief in my own ability, but also the cojones to go, that's our shape off the ball. In possession, we need to break this lot down. I need to find a different way. I need to break the mold. And that's what Eze is. But when he plays in that central position, at least for Arsenal, and it's not the same when he plays for England, we're struggling to get the ball into him often enough. And so while tactically he might be being asked to stay in that position, and that might be beneficial to the players around him and the whole attacking ecosystem, I want to see him at times go, it's not working for me here. I'm not getting the ball. I'm going left. I'm going right. I'm coming slightly deeper. I want to see him go, I believe in my own ability. I'm going to break out the shape and I'm going to do things. Otherwise, if you want him to be a robot, what was the point in signing him? You could have gone and signed someone who's much more positionally aware, who works harder, who's stronger physically, who's got more defensive tendencies. But instead, we went and brought this guy because of the talent and the skill set that he has. So let him show it off is essentially what I'm saying. What else have we got? Harry, what we need is backup for Zubi and Rice. Both are starting too many games this season. Yeah. And I think, Norgard is that, but I keep talking about the drop-off. I think there is a drop-off. And I think, in Rice's position, because I think Norgard is more of a 6 than an 8, but I suppose Norgard can play there. I suppose Marino is considered as a rotational option there, and we've seen him play there at times as well. And I think maybe Kai Havertz might be seen as a potential midfield option when he eventually returns. And that leads me on nicely to Ben's question. Harry, what do you see the club doing with Havertz? Will they give him a new contract, or will they sell him in the summer as he's still the highest paid player at the club? I see him playing a really, really important role in the squad still. I don't think he's going. I don't think he's going to be moved on at all. I don't. AFC Cape Town, just on my point about sort of Eze just going, you know what, I'm going to break the mold, I'm going to do my thing. Won't he sub you off if you don't do as he says? Not if you go and influence the game. Not if you go and win him the game. And if you go and win him the game, or you go and produce a couple of moments, then, Mikel Arteta is, people say he's quite stubborn. And I think to a point he can be. But at the same time, I think he is quite adaptable, and he is someone that's been willing to change his mind on certain things. So no, I don't think you can afford to worry about that if you're an expressive player like Eberici Eze, to be honest. I don't. I think you want to follow what your manager says to a degree, but there will be moments when you can break out of the mold. Like, do you guys think that when a player turns up and goes to do something sort of magical, or, gets bums off of seats and all the rest of it, that Mikel Arteta will be making a note of that, so that when they go in at half time, he can have a pop at them and say, you idiot, how dare you get the whole Emirates Stadium off of their seats and, score us a goal? You should have stayed in my system. Like, do people think he's like that? I don't get it. I don't get it. What else? Some people are saying that he hasn't played well off the left. I think he's probably played well off the left 2-3 times. I think he's only played well through the middle 2-3 times. So I don't really see what the big difference is. Jude says, given your preferred starting 11 when everyone's fit, what in your view would give Gyökeres the advantage over Kai? And I got your message, mate, and I will reply to you today, and we'll get that organized. I mean, they're different, aren't they? They're just different. Like, one's a false 9 and one's a 9. And I quite like what Gyökeres has given us in terms of running in behind and all the rest of it. And I'm not saying that Kai Havertz can't do that. He can. We've seen him do it on various occasions, but I don't think it's his natural game. I think his natural game is to drop a little bit deeper, to drop into pockets, to drop into holes and all the rest of it. So I just think it's a tactical thing. Like, I've got no issue with it's not one of those things where I'm like Gyökeres over Havertz, but it's not even close. No, of course it's close. And there might be games where I think it's better to play Kai. That one is probably one of the least cut and dry decisions that the manager will have to make. If you want to play a longer game, like you want to go direct with the idea of knockdowns, then Havertz is better for that. You want someone to hold the ball up, Havertz is better for that. You want someone spinning behind, though, it's Victor Gyökeres. You want someone to be a 6-yard box player, it's Victor Gyökeres. So I think that's the difference. MI Tech says, don't you think we need to start looking at deploying Lewis Skelly in midfield? We talked about this a little bit yesterday. Yeah, I'm not adverse to that. And I think if the situation continues the way it is at left back, with Calafiori doing brilliantly and obviously Piero Hincapié coming in, then there's a chance that, that's a way of increasing Lewis Skelly's minutes. Guitar Solo, in which game this season did you see a Christian Odegaard drop off? And please give us specific weaknesses you saw from him. Do not tell us about your clearly subjective eye test. In which game did I see a drop off between Norgard and Zubimendi or Norgard and Rice? Every single game that he's played, because he's not as good as those two players. And that is not even debatable. It is fact. Christian Odegaard is not as good a midfield player as Martin Zubimendi or Declan Rice. Does that mean he's crap? No, it doesn't, because they're both outstanding midfield players, but he's not on their level. If he was on the level of Rice or Zubimendi, then why doesn't Mikel give one of those two a breather more often and chuck Christian Odegaard in? He doesn't, because he also knows that there is a drop-off. And it's not even to have a go at Christian Odegaard. Like, your question is worded in a way where you are trying to make a point, but you're trying to make a point that doesn't need to be made, because my point is not sort of in opposition to yours per se. You're suggesting that I'm giving Christian Odegaard a rough ride. I think it is 100% fair and perfectly reasonable to believe that Christian Odegaard is a lesser midfield player than Rice or Zubimendi. He's got a role to play in the squad. That's fine. And he will play that role, and he'll do it just fine, I'm sure. But let's not pretend that he's as good as Rice or Zubimendi, because he's not. He's just not. That is fact. Like, if I did a poll, I wonder what it would look like in terms of sort of how many people think one way or the other. Anyway, we're going to leave it there. We're going to wrap up for today. Thank you so much for joining me. I really do appreciate it. We'll be back tomorrow morning with some unpopular Arsenal opinions. That's the subject of tomorrow's pod. And then from Monday, we're going to start building up again to the return of the Premier League. We've got the North London Derby to come as well. We're all going to be chewing our fingernails over the next few days, hoping that key players stay fit and available. So yeah, really looking forward to the upcoming content. We'll have some guests on next week as well, which will be great. And I will see you all very soon. Until the next one, take care of yourselves and have a wonderful Friday. Up the Arsenal. Goodbye.
Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe. Chronicles of a Gooner. Harry Symeou time. Arsenal. Come on, you Gunners. Arsenal. Chronicles of a Gooner.